Searing your brain with acoustic malevolence, we are the forked blast of Archaeo Lightning, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Lost yet again somewhere deep in the forgotten archive stacks of the sump. But hell, at least the signal's nice and strong.
Tell me again, why do you guys always give Marky the map?
Hey. I've been telling him for years. I'm good with the power maul and my boomstick. But someone keeps hearing me say Hive Nav. I don't know why it's a thing. Hive navigation it apparently sounds like boomstick.
Boomstick? What? I mean, at least we always find the good shit.
I am your deranged, warpstone-obsessed squig herder Goblin King. My co-host today is the emerald-crested skink priestess herself, Emmy.
That's where you say, hey.
It's an audio medium.
Hello, everyone. I thought you were working down that script.
I like how you waved, and I'm like, nobody on the podcast can hear you wave.
You're supposed to say hi.
Waving to the radio. Classy.
You can't hear me waving. Hello, we're here.
Getting us lost because he doesn't know north from the choppa at his side is the green-skinned guide, Marky.
What? Even in old world now? Now I'm the guide. Now it's nav, guide. You guys keep giving me this.
Welcome to maps. You're stuck, bro.
Stop. I gave the nav course to some other guy in Boot. I just followed him.
That's why you get stuck with it now.
Dude, it's pitch black, and they're like, here, find these points on the nav map. And I'm like, yeah, here, find these points on the nav map.
See, that's like the only thing I'd be good at in the military. Standing around and paying attention, not my thing. Finding shit on maps, fucking primo. I'm good at that.
Constantly suggesting we all invest in real estate opportunities in Nagaroth. It's our black-clad dark polar bear, ChuckerFly.
Hello, everyone. I know it's chilly Nagath, but you know what? You either come willingly, or
we drag you,
or we got transportation,
or we make you come
for you from the old world.
Come willingly, or we make you.
And constantly reminding us about the blessings of Sigmar and enlightening us to the advancements of the Empire. It's Kev.
Hey, at least we got gunpowder.
Nobody wants to hear that shit, Kevin.
Who cares about the Empire?
Well, the thing about gunpowder is you're going to hear it whether you want to or not.
And those people come unwillingly.
If there's anybody left standing.
So welcome to the first episode of Under the Realms of Madness. This is Warhammer, the Old World, Part 1. You might be asking yourself right now, what the hell is this old world thing they're talking about anyway? Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about our love for the old world setting with an eye towards setting up and exploring most of what is important to know as we approach exploring the end times and then the Age of Sigmar. But before we dive into the prehistory of the world, let's all take a couple of minutes to gush about the fantasy side of the Warhammer world.
You want Marky to go first?
Yeah, I want to hear Marky's favorite
I'm coming. Hold on.
No, it's gushing, not coming.
Oh, I'm gushing. Yeah, old world. I know lots about that.
Gush more.
Yeah, it's
I really
it's
need to
pretty.
choose the words I use better. Apparently,
Chuck, get
classic
involved.
kindergartners.
Use both
What's that,
hands
Kev?
and get him gushing more.
Let me gush, Ryan. All right. It's pretty. It's not super technological.
He'll have a
That
favorite
right?
faction by the episode conclusion.
It's all right. It's not 40K. All right, give me
No, it's not 40K.
It's not
They
40K.
do have technology. It's just cooler.
Different.
Different.
Yeah. All right, Chuck, hit us with your favorite faction and your general opinions about the old world.
My favorite faction is the Dark Elves.
It doesn't matter.
It matters.
He'll never bring it up. He'll never bring it up again. By the way, that's it.
I need a rock soundbite. It doesn't matter if it's the Empire.
So yeah, it's the Dark Elves. When I first got into any type of tabletop gaming was this. I basically went to my cousin drugged me to his friend's house, and it was, I think, 4-on-4 playing 5,000 points each. And I think this was back in don't know, I want to say third or fourth, right before the rules changed. And I went, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. And I did a little bit of looking into the lore. And I'm like, I don't want to be humans because that's boring. I don't want to be dwarves because that's boring. Lizard men sounded fun, but I was like, I don't want to be a lizard. Then I read about the Dark Elves. Basically, if you're a Scorpio, you know what I'm talking about. Everything
You're
a Scorpio. Yeah, I'm a Scorpio. So everything a Scorpio wants to do in real life and can't do, the Dark Elves do it.
Are you talking about the astrological sign
Yes.
Scorpio?
Yes.
Why
We're the serial killers.
Yeah.
do you believe in that?
My
Do you believe in that?
ex-husband is one.
If you ran around with all the little demons running around my head, you would believe it.
Really? So you believe in what is it? Astrological signs, or what is that? What it's called?
Astrology.
If
Yeah.
you start
Astrology,
if
yeah.
you start paying attention to people in your life and finding out what their signs are, you'd be like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Lost a little respect for you,
Wow.
Chuck. Just saying.
Okay. Well,
Even though the
mutual.
main host of the entire podcast is an outed witch, you lost faith in Chuck.
Yeah.
Well, see, we
Just-
thought Chuck was reasonable. We knew you were a heretic.
Oh, okay. I got it.
I just know how to control my dark elf.
All right.
urges.
All right. So all I know is
All
that
right, so dark elves are amazing. They're king. I'm not even trying to pronounce it correctly because I keep getting recorrected.
Malika.
But Melkaith. So
I think
he.
that's still wrong.
No, I don't. I really don't care. I'll butcher it.
It's like
He's the
Malamute,
chosen one.
but Keith.
He was the
Malkeith.
chosen one. His mother, let's just say, helped him start a whole new empire, and it was all about Cain, the god of murder. But in the background, she's really a Slanesh worshiper. So there you go. It's all wrapped up really quick right there. You know, cocaine, Slanesh. They live in the snow. Looks like cocaine all the time.
So I'm a Capricorn.
I thought it was
What is
summed
that?
up by
I don't know.
Dark Elf number 1, fuck your mother.
Hey, Kevin, I'm trying to learn something.
Have you ever heard how she's described?
No.
I mean, if you live to be like 5,000-10,000 years old, like what are you gonna do?
You don't know what a Capricorn is?
I don't
It's
remember.
the goat one. You're a beast, man. Deal with it, bitch.
Beast man?
Yeah.
What is that?
Lethargic.
You know what a beast man is. A beast man's the same thing from the 40K universe,
Yeah.
Yeah, goat people.
Just not with guns.
just not with guns.
No, they
I
got
don't know,
bow and
man. You
arrows.
lost.
though.
You
And
lose me
spears.
at no guns, man. I
They're
don't know.
really fun. I really like them.
Okay, there's 4 factions with guns. You've
And they're
got
all lame.
no, you got the Empire, which is the humans,
Cities
Lame.
of
You've-
Sigmar.
you-
and Age of Sigmar.
you've got the dwarves.
Lame.
Mhm.
They have guns, and they're the reason
Right.
the humans have gunpowder. Actually, the
Right?
Sigmar
Next.
made a deal with them, and then
Dwarves.
you've got
Dwarves, but dark.
Chaos dwarves.
Chaos dwarves.
Um,
There
Yeah, no,
is
next
Chaos dwarves are-
the pirates.
Oh yeah,
Lame.
pirates.
Yeah,
That's safe.
Oh boy.
they're vampire pirates though.
the
Like
dogs of
zombie
war.
pirates.
That's kind of better.
The mercenaries. There's a mercenary force.
Oh yeah, the
You're some-
Tillian. They're the Tillians.
Dogs of
Mhm.
war.
Yeah,
They have
the-
guns, but they're just like humans, right?
They're
Oh, they're a little bit of
they're
everybody.
They're basically a human faction. Yeah,
Mhm.
Hodgepodge.
Yeah.
yeah.
Who's this? Who you putting on screen
Mar-
for the patrons?
Marathi.
Morathi.
This is the shameless
Malekith's mother.
shameless plug for Patreon.
I can't ever remember the name of it, but the East Asian faction,
who
Cathayans.
apparently
Oh.
Cathay. Yeah, they have gunpowder also,
was
and I'm pretty sure
trapped
they didn't get it from the dwarves.
So do
I'm
the
guessing.
ogres.
in a
The ogres
Chaos
also
war
have
band.
Yeah,
And
gunpowder.
yeah.
The Elven King
ogres do.
Keldor came by, slaughtered the warband, and saved her. But in secret, it was her warband
Interesting.
of Slanesh worshipping elves.
Yeah, they're awesome. It's like the Drukari kind of.
They're very similar to the
It's
Drukari.
where Jakari comes from.
Yeah,
Yep.
So the Druchi. So Emmy.
Druchi.
Yeah, that's their faction name.
All right, Emmy,
I thought
what's
it
your
was
sign?
Druchi.
What's your
My
sign?
son?
Man,
My sun sign. I'm a
What is there a moon sign?
Yes.
Your big three: your sun, your moon, and your rising.
What's rising?
I don't fucking know. It's
Oh.
like what time you were born at. I don't know. It's a whole thing, but I'm a Libra with a
Libra, okay.
Pisces moon sign and a Sagittarius rising.
Wait, so you can be multiple signs? I thought it was like, so it's kind of
You
like
have
the
a
Chinese zodiac.
primary,
Yeah.
secondary, tertiary kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like the Chinese zodiac where they have like a monthly, a yearly, and like a decade thing where it's like, yeah, I'm a rat, but I'm a rooster, but I'm a dragon kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're a ratty rooster.
And a dragon.
But the main
Oh.
one that most people, when they ask you what your sign is, would be your sun sign, and I'm a Libra. So it means that I'm too social and too outgoing for my own good, kind of an airhead and like a theater kid, kind of.
Is that like a zebra, but spacey, cosmic? Like a cosmic zebra, a Libra?
Like that, yeah.
Ryan, educate me.
What?
What is a Libra?
A Libra is the
justice sign, the balance.
I was about to say it's the
Seventh or
scales,
eighth?
right?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
7th or
Oh,
8th
it's-
sign.
Mhm.
Okay, it's like the little justice scale.
Scales, yeah,
Gotcha.
the little justice
Okay, so it's
scales.
not an animal.
No, it's the little scales.
It also doesn't tell us what Emmy's favorite faction is and
Oh,
why.
right. It does.
We
though.
need to stop swerving into Uncle Corner pretty hard here.
Sorry.
It's all
my
right. It's cool.
favorite faction and why would be the Seraphon, but in the old world they're known as the Lizard Men.
Yes.
I have a BS in paleontology. I'd
Oh, there you
spent
go.
like 4.5 years studying the dinosaurs and never found full-time lucrative employment as a paleontologist. But when I found out about these guys, because I played a lot of 40K before, I was like, there aren't robots in this, but there are space traveling, dinosaur riding lizard people that are vaguely South American, kind of. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. So I love these guys. They're great. And their lore is all over the place and super goofy and ridiculous.
Yeah, like to the point where lizard men in the end times may have gotten the help from Eldari, not elves, Eldari, as in from
Eldari.
40K.
Yes.
Yeah.
They prank called them using the space phone.
We'll definitely hit some interesting
Well,
crossover stuff.
that'll be
Kevin.
more in the end times episode, but
Yeah.
we have to bring in the Skaven versus Seraphon fought so hard they prank called the Eldar, because that is like my favorite little tidbit of end times lore.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff. So Kev, I think Marky needs to know your sign.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin.
My sign.
Kevin, keep it short, but what's your sign?
All right. Just for entertainment's sake. Oh no, that'll get confusing.
I'm not going to guess what you are because I don't know what all the signs
No,
are.
I was gonna make the animal noise, but I realized that a goat and a sheep kind of make similar things. But I'm an Aries.
Ah.
Is that like the mermaid?
No, I said
No.
a goat and a sheep. Is that a mermaid?
He didn't say Ariel.
Like Philatides?
No, it's like
What?
it's a ram.
It's a ram.
It's
a
like a
fire sign.
horned
Philatides
goat
was
thing.
a ram. He was half
Yeah.
ram.
Well, you know what
I forgot
both
what
of
they
these
called them.
was?
Both of these nuts.
Yeah.
You hear about the famous one called Chogon?
Chogon this dude.
Seriously?
All right. Thank you, Kevin. What's your favorite faction?
Empire. All right, next.
Okay, cool.
No, it's
Let's
not.
move on to the
actually.
show.
I actually really like the dwarves. I think now this is not current. I like the old dwarves. I don't
Steampunk
really.
dwarfs.
I mean, I like the new ones. They're cool, but I much preferred the like Total War
Actual
End Times.
fantasy.
Yeah, the fantasy
Actual
dwarves.
fantasy dwarves.
I like the idea of the mountain hold dwarves. Like that I love that concept. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna live in this giant underground city in the mountain, and when shit
Because
gets
ours.
bad, and we have this cool underground highway that connects everything, so that the bad weather of the mountains and the fact that there's orcs running around up there isn't a problem. Like that whole thing is pretty cool. I mean,
And the book
then
of
the
Grudges.
orcs get in, and then it is a problem. Oh yeah, the Book of Grudges is awesome. I love the book.
You're looking at me, Chuck. I don't know what that is. The
That's
book of-
going in the book.
I'm just saying the Book of Grudges is cool.
Marky gets added to the book of grudges every single episode.
The fact that Mark doesn't like
you wrong
dwarves
the
is in the
dwarves,
book of grudges.
You go in the Book of Grudges.
Yeah.
And so they throw everything they have at you.
I got one of those.
Yeah.
So it's just
a bunch of shit I've done.
Here you go, Marky. So you haven't played against the Votan yet, but you know about the grudge tokens that the Votan get?
Nope. Sorry, Kev.
Well, I figured you would have paid attention at some point to
haven't paid any attention to 40K.
Return of
Waiting
the
for
squats
10th.
to 40K.
Yep, waiting for 10th.
But
And they index you guys and you lose all that.
I mean, it's a fundamental mechanic of the way the faction plays. I don't think they're really losing it.
They get grudge tokens, kind of like
That's what
how
if you beat up a unit, then you get a token on you, which makes it so I can basically do more damage.
yeah, they're like infestation tokens.
In the short term, it's you killed one of my Hearthkin, so fuck you. I'm gonna shoot you and +1 to wound and things like that.
They're not infestation tokens.
I like that mechanic.
The Gene Stealers, they're infestation tokens, and that lets them come up wherever they want. What are the Gene Stealer cults get something like that where they can mark a unit? They don't do extra
Crossfire.
damage, but they can mark a unit. They can mark a unit.
It's like, and depending on how many you get, it's like it starts off with like minus
It's like a
1
marker.
AP.
This is excuse me,
whatever.
I'm sorry. This is an old world podcast right now. So if you can refrain from bringing up 40K, I would appreciate it.
I was trying to help you, but you didn't understand the reference because your 40K is outdated.
I got you at Grudge Book. I took that down.
My sign is Sagittarius.
Okay.
Although I am a cusp, the next one, not Taurus. I can't remember what the next one is.
Capricorn.
Okay. Cusp Capricorn. I don't remember any of my other stuff because my particular fanciful division of witchdom does not actually use astrology. It uses medicines, which are different. But anyway.
What's the Sagittarius? Is that the mermaid?
That's the hunter. The
There's
horse
a hunter?
dude. Yeah.
There's a horse dude?
I'm the
Centaur.
centaur guy.
Centaur.
There's a centaur?
Yeah. I'm
Damn.
a constellation, bitch.
I don't know shit. So
And
I'll pull
Orion
off
is on
Orion's-
my belt.
I was gonna say I'll pull off Orion's belt and beat you with it. Aren't they all constellations? It's all astrology.
Yes. Yeah, they're all
Yeah, okay.
constellations.
Yeah. However,
Um,
that one's easier to find for most people.
Yeah, it's
really?
one of the ones most
Some
people
of them
know what
are much
Sagittarius
easier
is
to
like.
find.
Oh,
Because
is
some
that a
of them
part
are
of?
related to like stars that you were more easily seen.
Is the Sagittarius the one that's a part of Orion's belt? Like that's its waist or
Yes,
whatever?
Orion's belt
okay.
is Sagittarius's. Yeah.
See, you're learning.
I started out playing 40K, but the majority of my early
yes.
play was actually in Warhammer Fantasy. I was very, very competitive in 6th, 7th, and 8th. I was part of a lot of the end time events in Southern California. My favorite faction, yes, is the rats.
Yeah.
We don't like the men. They smell funny.
I thought you were going to say dwarves.
Nope. I'm a Skaven fan. I have
You haven't heard Ryan's dwarf story?
probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 6,000 points of Skaven, mostly clan rats and storm vermin.
Awesome.
I think
How many plague?
Yes, the Legion comes.
Not as many. I hadn't been super into plague monks. I have 2 units of old metal globuladiers, and I have 2 units of old plague monks, but that's pretty much
Giselles?
it.
What about Giselles?
I have a bunch of Giselles. I love Warplock Giselles are awesome.
Giselles are awesome.
Sorry, Marky. I know you're
think
so.
the
I know
idea
you're
is
lost
really
right
cool.
Now,
Right.
oddly enough, as
Giselles
Marky,
are
I'm pretty
basically
sure.
Even snipers, 2-man team.
Yeah,
you
it's a
gotta, you gotta
2-man.
speak into the mic because I can't hear you.
It's a 2-man team. The Giselles.
Yeah, they've
and
got a
they're like
really long
snipers.
sniper, and then there's a shield standing, and there's a dude holding a shield standing in
The
front.
globes he's talking about is they're basically like throwing plague at you.
I knew a chick named Giselle once in high school.
I did
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So
Did
I
she
don't
snort
know.
warp dust and talk in riddles?
I don't know whether or not, Marky, you were attempting to make fun of me, or if you were trying to call back to an earlier episode. But my
I was.
favorite
Both.
my favorite fantasy race is dwarfs. My favorite
Oh.
like traditional fantasy race is dwarfs. I really like dwarfs.
I just remember the game you were telling me about where you fought a dwarf guy and he took a crazy steam tank
Oh,
thing
yeah.
and ran all your army off the board. I think we talked about it in episode 1.
No, the dwarf guy was the guy
I
that
thought
did
that
all
was-
the weird like narration. That it was the
Yeah.
Empire guy that
And
used the
this
steam
guy
tank.
has
Oh.
yeah,
Steam tanks.
Yeah,
Yep.
Imperial
Oh,
steam tank.
no.
Steam tanks were legit BS in game.
I have one. It's sitting
It's
next to me.
essentially
I don't
like
know what I'm going to do with
bringing
it.
a Baneblade infantry fight, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But nobody
they're-
else can bring a Baneblade or
Yeah.
anything that can challenge a Baneblade.
I thought you said Beyblade, and I was like, what the fuck are we
No,
using
not
for proxies now?
Fuck yeah.
Beyblades, come on. If it knocks your unit off the table, it counts as a mortal.
Yeah, this is a new underworld
It-
format we came up with. And we got a top stadium.
It was one of those things that somebody would put it on
Next-
a table
next rules
and you would
DLC.
literally go, seriously?
Yeah.
Especially
Steam
like
Tank
in the
sucked.
earlier editions, they were ridiculous.
They actually list Steam. If you listen to anybody talk about from inside Games Workshop talk about why Warhammer Fantasy fell apart, they actually list steam tanks as one of the reasons. Because essentially the introduction of the steam tank only made sense for the faction that it came out with. The Warp Lightning Cannon was the answer for the Skaven, but other than those two factions, there was pretty much no way to balance stuff like that. And as to where it's historically accurate that sort of stuff was being played with, it's
Mhm.
historically accurate only to that race.
And
Or
that's
to
it.
those races. And that
Yeah.
makes it really, really hard to balance the game. So many of us had issues with steam tanks. I want to say they came out late 6th. They're a metal model. I have one.
Yep.
I've been
They
trying
used-
to
they
decide
used
if
to
I'm going to
be,
sell it or build it, paint
I
it.
think you used to be able to get in a white dwarf or something. It would have the or what? It was a
It was-
pattern for cardboard.
It was like you could they had that one. They
Yep,
had the
so
one
you
that
could
you could
build-
proxy.
Because that was the original thing, was you had to build it and be this little tiny cardboard model.
But a lot like the original Thunderhawk dropship that you had to order only from that white dwarf. A bunch of YouTubers a couple of like years ago went nuts and like raised money to buy them because they're ridiculously expensive now, and they're notoriously heavy and difficult to deal with. The storm, is it storm? What the hell is that Space Marine thing? I am in the wrong headspace to remember 40k lore.
Thunderhawk.
Thunderhawk?
Yeah.
Yeah, the really big
but
one.
This is a fantasy old world podcast, Ryan. I'd like to
Yeah, I
remind
know.
you. So-
Yes, thank you. So speaking of, let's actually jump into the lore.
All right, let's do this.
So the Great Ice Age and the coming of the Great Old Ones. So Marky, I want you to kind of pay attention because there's a lot of stuff that links the old Warhammer world and 40k.
They're going to be a test.
No.
I'm not a good test taker.
I know.
You'll be okay. I'll hold your hand.
Chuck will help you. The Old Ones first arrived in great silver ships, their civilization being something that was not constrained by the distances of space or even bound by any sense of time. On the many planets of their empire, or at least those worlds that they claimed and manipulated, they built great gates, which allowed them to step instantly from one place to another, without the need for using their spacecraft. For some reason, the Old Ones took an interest in the Old World and decided it was something they wished to toy with. They placed 2 great gates, one on each pole of the Old World. They then used their technology to move the ice-locked planet nearer to the star's sun. This allowed the once ice-locked poles, which only broke into a thin band of temperate habitation in the equatorial region, to begin to warm. Great dragons and shaggoths had, up to this point, mostly dominated the entire planet. The shaggoths are giant orc dragons, basically. To act as its first stewards and servants, the Old Ones set about creating the first spawning of the Slan Magi priests, creatures that were extremely intelligent and could understand and act to guide the Old World according to the plans of the Old Ones. Slan's intellect allowed them to understand the teachings and instructions of their omnipresent and omnipotent masters. So Old Ones are fleshed out a little bit more in this episode. We're fleshing them out a little bit more in this episode, but just like in 40k, The Old Ones are this enigmatic ancient race that essentially were all powerful. They were gods unto themselves, and communicating with them was difficult.
Mhm.
So there was spaceships.
Yes.
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 The Old Ones arrived on a spaceship to a planet and decided to fuck with it
Yep.
by creating webway portals at each pole.
That is correct.
And
But it's
moving
totally
it.
not related in any way, shape, or form to the 40K universe.
Yeah.
And there's orc dragons.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ogre
The Cho'Gath.
dragons. The Shag
And
the
the
Shaggoth are
ogre.
like ogre
Yeah.
dragons.
Oh,
And
like
the chaos
orc.
gods
They're
are
like
still
picture
One at a time. One at a time.
Picture a giant lizard centaur, but it has an ogre for the top half. Yeah, that's it right there.
All right, what'd
That
you say,
thing.
Kev?
I said, and on top of all this, there's also like, chaos gods and things, but it's totally not in the same universe.
Yeah. We're getting there. The Slan began to cultivate creatures of the old world. Those that the Old Ones had seen showed evolutionary promise, the Slan acting to sculpt their future progress as time went on. This was the elves, dwarves, and men. These were the three that they started working on first.
Mhm.
For the creatures that weren't desirable, they had much darker plans. They set about next creating the Saurus, a race that was unquestionably loyal to the Slan and which would execute their orders with cold-blooded, ruthless efficiency. Part of the Saurus, they also created the Skinks. These were artisans and builders of the society, and they began to follow the Old Ones' detailed plans to mapping out a bunch of different cities all across the planet. All of the Lizardmen's buildings, everything the Skinks built, was part of a giant project that allowed them to link the entire planet into a single geo web of magical energy. And then the Slan, or the Old Ones, could tap into that to empower their magic and kind of push their agenda further and further along.
Mhm.
However, to get back to those polar portals, they were linked to one another and the rest of the Old Ones network using the warp. And this realm of chaos started to grow malign forces. Eventually, they gathered into malevolent entities that actually had intelligence, and these absolutely loathed and hated the Old Ones. It's possible that the Old Ones actually foresaw all of this, and they cultivated and created all of the mortal races specifically to make this planet the place where the war would eternally go between chaos and the material realm.
That's right.
So the Lizardmen were
Yeah.
the first like actual race that
Mhm.
was put on the planet.
So the Slan were the first. So the Old Ones like manufactured the Slan. They spawned the Slan.
And the
And
Slan
then-
created the Source and the Skinks.
Yes.
Yes. And the elves and the dwarves and the men.
Oh, they made
Basically,
them.
the Slan saw that like primates were starting to do primate-y things, and they nudged the race that way. They're like, yes.
They elevated it in a way.
Are the Slan the toad people?
Yes, the
Slan
Slan are the toad people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the fat toad that sits on the big like
That's
magic.
right.
Yeah. Lord
rock thing.
Croak and the Slan Star Master.
Yep.
And yeah.
Right there. See him? Floating.
Floating along.
Beautiful fat bastard. I love those models.
Oh, I do too. I love them. Writing notes.
And see the monoliths in the
That's
picture?
They ride
that's going to be the
dinosaurs,
next
like-
race I play in Total War. Is going to be the Lizard Men. I've been thinking
Okay,
about
yes.
trying them, but I haven't. It's literally I haven't played them at all.
You will not regret them. I love them. I play
Oh.
tabletop. I think they're awesome.
I love Lizardmen. In the end times, I had 3 fully functional armies. I had my Skaven, which I still have. I had Lizardmen, and I had Beastmen.
I had. Well, I still have my dark dwarves. My
Dark
dark
elves.
elves. And I used to have probably 10,000 points of orcs.
Damn.
No.
Of old one? Like old
I
orcs?
sold them.
Speaking
Yeah,
of orcs,
Oh, yeah.
the coming of Gork and Mork.
Orc.
Around
Orc
the
and
time,
Mork exist here?
Yes.
Yes.
around
Oh,
the
yeah.
time, you're gonna love this. Around
Orc.
the time the Old Ones and the Slan were guiding the creation of the first races, those of elves, dwarves, and men, the greenskins appeared. It is told that Gork and Mork descended from the heavens to spread orcs and goblins all across the world. The Old Ones deemed the greenskins a massive threat, but despite the Saurus's Legion attempt to wipe them out, they have endured to this day and even thrived. It's heavily implied that Gork and Mork brought orc spores and sprinkled them liberally around the planet.
But you gotta remember, in the old lore, there are orc women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
there are lady
And the
orcs.
goblins
Where do you
and the
think you get-
goblins are a separate faction. They're like they're separate but
Subfaction.
different sect.
You
It's
play
yeah.
Blood Bowl.
Like
That
ones
is the
that
old
orcs-
fantasy
I
world.
thought they were like squig boobs or something, you know, things that they
No.
attach to their chest.
Nope, those are orc
No.
women.
Those are lady orcs, and they call the old ones the brain boys, and it's so cute.
So, do they have genitalia?
One would assume
Do they spread like fungus?
wildfire.
Do they spread
It's-
like?
it's
do they
not-
spore?
It's not really
That's not
super
detailed
clear
out.
whether or not they spore
Yeah.
or whether or not they breed. But it is Gork and Mork brought them from the heavens being an
Yep.
old world term for space.
Space.
So this
Space.
is the second major race where or the second major portion where just something came from space.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Well, they got to have genitalia. That's just
They
They
probably do. We're
They-
gonna the planet has a genitalia. We'll get there.
The way the old
The
lore
what?
is, yes. The way the old lore is, it has to be. Yeah.
it's I've seen it in a couple shows. Like orc women are gnarly. Whatchamacallit? In World of Warcraft.
Just leave that on the ground, I guess. Like, wait, what do you mean?
Well, so like in World of Warcraft.
I could just picture Marky like searching orc women, and it's the girls smashing
Death
watermelons
by
with their
Snoop
thighs.
Snoop.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my god. I've seen that video.
Exactly. That's
All right.
but it's gnarly. Go on.
So the prehistory of the races. For the next 400 years or so, the lizardmen, elves, and dwarves continued to develop. In most cases, either directly or indirectly nudged in the correct direction by the old ones themselves. The lizardmen acted to guide the other races, mostly staying in their temple cities in Lustria and in the Southlands. The elves, having mastery of magic, stayed isolated and protected on their island of Ulathan.
Ulthuan?
Ulthuan. I like,
Oh,
yeah, okay.
Ulathan.
It's almost like Ulthway, the craft world.
Yes, that's how they pronounce it. And a lot of people pronounce it like Ulfway, but I'm like, that doesn't, yeah. The dwarves, industrious and driven, spread and expanded throughout the mountainous regions of most of the world. Humans, endlessly adaptable, existed as nomadic hunter-gatherers. The greenskins lived mostly alongside humans, both living comparatively primal nomadic lives, claiming the plains and forests of most of the world as they spread. As the threat of chaos grew in the north, the old ones created the ogres as another defense against the coming darkness they foresee. Around this time, the old ones also created the halflings, although for what purpose is less identifiable, at least
For a
now
good time.
in history.
For a good time.
For a good time, call the moot.
Eventually, the Eldritch portals completely collapsed, becoming permanent rifts into the realms of chaos. This caused raw magic to explode across the world, while warpstone comets rained down across the globe, casting condensed magic directly into the air. The taint of chaos spread throughout the forests and choked the very air. This created the twisted abominations of nomadic men and beasts. Under the cursed dark moon of Morslieb, the Skaven and the Beastmen were born in this way.
And then, oh man,
And then, yeah.
yeah, some things
So-
are gonna happen with Morsleeb.
Oh, yeah.
It's made of cheese.
100% made
More
cheese.
sleep is the moon. The big sky
So-
moon.
The
Yes,
second
yes.
moon. The second moon.
Oh, right. There's
So
two
with this-
moons. I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
So
What's
so
the
were
other
the
one
Skaven,
called? It's like
can't remember.
Mansleep and more sleep or something like that.
Mansleeb.
yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So were the
See, I
Skaven
pay
just
attention. I've paid
rats?
enough attention.
Kevin, I'm gonna kick you in the dick.
Gotta get up here.
I will find you.
I think I
I
can
know
answer.
people.
I think I know your question, and I think I can answer it. You're gonna like text his wife? I know people. So as the comets of Warpstone kind of like rained down and exploded and like released essentially like ionized magic essence into the air, it descended and kind of like gathered in low places and in the dark forests and stuff of the planet. And because that's where men and goats and men and rats and all of that kind of existed, it melded in certain places, it melded them together and created new races. So beast men are essentially warp smashing a goat and a human together, and Skaven are essentially the warp smashing a human and a rat together.
Oh.
Yeah,
The
they're
building
not
blocks
rats,
of
they're
life.
rat men.
So
Yeah, they're literally
it's almost-
rat men.
Yeah.
so it's almost like ooze, right? So like you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
Master
yeah.
Splinter and
It's even
Okay.
green. It's even green. And technically, if there were turtle men, they would be beast men. So yes, it's
Yeah.
the ooze.
interesting.
Master Splinter, yes.
Next up, we have the Great Catastrophe. So to give you guys an idea, this time is roughly 5,000 years before the existence of the imperial calendar. When the
Mhm.
portals collapsed, the old ones simply vanished, leaving the world to face its first and second incursions of chaos. No one knows what really happened to the old ones. If they left as part of their plan, if they were truly cast out, if they were corrupted or maybe destroyed, or if they had deemed their planetary experiment a lost cause and just left it.
Their webway gates collapsed. They had no way back.
Yeah, their webway gates collapsing are what starts the Great Catastrophe.
Which essentially just like nuked what would be the Antarctica and
Yeah, it screwed up both
North
poles
Pole.
pretty bad.
Yeah. I was always wondering how they explain that, because in Total Warhammer you can see it. It's literally like the world ends up there, and it's just
Mhm.
fucked up.
So the webway gates exploded, and when they exploded, they tore rifts into the north and south poles. And
So
from
to-
those rifts, demons just
Chaos.
fucking came out.
Yep.
Sick.
Yeah.
So the Total War Warhammer games, do they start essentially at, like when wars were
When we finish this episode, we will have primed people to have a good understanding of where some of the Total War games take place.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because the games jump back and forth in time. Our next episode will deal a lot with the rise of men and the Empire and the inevitable end times quite a bit more. We'll get a lot closer to that, but yeah. So it's likely that the last act of the old ones was set to influencing and instructing the Slan and how to seal or attempt to seal the rents in reality that had been left behind at the poles before the races of the old world were completely consumed by chaos. Sacrificing nearly half their numbers, the Slan managed to partially close and heal these tears in reality, but they remained open enough that the magic continued to seep into the world, and demons were able to pull themselves across the divide and take physical form, allowing them to besiege the fledgling races of the world. Lizard men, the largest and most organized civilization, allowed the Slan to raise the largest military force. These great armies set out to hold the demons at bay. They redirected the flow of rivers and caused volcanoes to erupt, all in an effort to stem the tide of invaders. But over 1,000 years, they were pushed back completely into Lustria. The Southland temple cities were lost, and most of the first spawn Slan at this point had been killed. However, using their magic, the lizard men converted Lustria into a tangled jungle of death traps, carnivorous plants, and massive biting insects. They basically turned Lustria into a death world. They turned Lustria into Catachan. Eventually, the Tzeentch Lord of Change, Karios Fateweaver, besieged Lustria, the forces of chaos ravaging temple city after temple city. Over 1,000 years, they pushed the Slan back so that only a handful remained under the protection of Slan Lord Croak himself, the last of the first spawning in the city of Itza. This siege would last for another 400 years.
Yep. They're
look at him.
off-brand
yes.
with Croak. Yeah.
So
Fat
are
Boy
the-
Supreme.
Are the lizard men like the most powerful of the races?
They were for a time.
Not anymore.
I would
Dark
say
elves.
arguably not, but they're definitely the oldest, and I think they're kind of the OGs, and they're really, really interesting. You'll see how this whole thing comes together in the end times, and it's really neat to see.
So just to give you an idea, the large African-looking continent on the map is the Southlands, and the South
South
American-looking
is
continent
Lustria.
is Lustria. So the lizard men at one point controlled more than half the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They just lost so much during the battle against Chaos. And the major reason is because the Slan, were the old ones' tools to ensure that the planet survived. So the Slan raised these massive armies to attempt to protect the entire world. But they were just pushed back and pushed back and pushed back and pushed back.
Get right.
They were the first and
over
hardest
time.
hit by Chaos.
Are the lizardmen a part of like the order?
Yes.
Yeah.
They ally with the Order, but they're kind of their own thing.
They ally with Order, but only because they're not disorder.
They're basically, this is our land. Stay over there.
Yep.
It's kind of how they are.
That's how they became in the old world when all of the shenanigans or the catastrophe, the great catastrophe have like finished here in a little bit of history. The lizard folk, or the lizard men, very much become like the isolationists. They stop leaving. They become very insular. They don't like dealing with people. So the dwarves managed to continue to expand and develop for a few hundred years after the great catastrophe started. But eventually they became besieged by the forces of Nurgle. Under the great unclean one, Kugoth, the dwarven ancestor gods Grungi, Valea, and Grimnir led their people during this time. Grungi teaches the dwarven people great metalworking craftsmanship and how to inscribe runes of power into their weapons. Valea uses her power to protect the people, and Grimnir leads the dwarven war hosts. Kugoth is eventually defeated at Karaza Karaka, which is one of their major halls. It's the World Hall.
Karaza Karak.
Karak, not Karaka. Thank you.
Yes.
Valea constructs the Great Hall and Karzaka Karak, and in 4523, before the imperial calendar, dwarven written records are assumed to have officially started. So that was the first mark in the Book of Grudges.
Demons.
Yep. Stinky demons.
We killed this stinky boy outside our gates.
And it's kind of funny that the first dwarven conflict in a way is against Nurgle, when dwarves are actually like well, I guess it makes sense because Nurgle hates dwarves, because dwarves are immune to most of Nurgle's bullshit.
Yep. That's one of the reasons that Kugoth was so pissed, was because so Kugoth, and we're giving you guys a very big summary of all of these events, because when we come back and we touch individual factions in the old world in the future, we're going to go into like dwarven history. But Kugoth was basically experimenting with viruses on the old world.
Father.
And he's the favorite of Nurgle, and he ran into the dwarves and couldn't fucking infect them. So he got super pissed and was like, "Oh hell no, boys, we're going to kill you."
No,
and they eventually defeated him.
Which is so funny because like Nurgle and the Maggotkin of Nurgle, the Nurgle mortals, their entire like fighting strategy is to be disgustingly resilient. So it's like the toughest chaos faction and the toughest order faction just having this like
opposed to one another.
Yeah,
the dwarves do have some serious firepower though.
And
that's how they're able to turn it around, is they have flamethrowers and cannons. Nurgle can't touch that.
And this is kind of the start of us getting into a lot of the major history stuff that happens up until the rise of men. You'll notice as we get through it that in Warhammer 40K, it's the Imperium of Man. In the old world, it's the dwarves. In a lot of ways, the dwarves are the ones that kind of build all of this super high-tech functioning empire that's just good and resilient and widespread, and everybody else is kind of playing catch up in a lot of ways.
And lots of cannons.
The 40K guns. Imperium of Man is kind of all of the Order faction minus the elves.
Yeah. in a lot of ways.
In a way.
But if you look at like if you crack open both books and you look at the ancient histories like side by side, a lot of the stuff that like the Age of Technology was doing, the dwarves do in the old world. Like,
Right.
It's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but it's close. So it's kind of interesting that it took so long for squats to come back. But anyway.
Yeah.
So the High Elves of Ulthuan. How did you pronounce it so pretty, Emmy?
That's Duncan Rhodes says it, in all his painting videos. He says Ulthuan.
Ulthuan Grey.
Ulthuan. All right. The High Waves of Ulthuan had lived on the island that had been created specifically for them by the Old Ones. This paradise had allowed them to develop in isolation until the events of the Great Catastrophe. While highly magically gifted, they used their skills to create art and explore other peaceful avenues, completely naive to the ways of warfare. They basically had hunting implements and they had swords for like honor duels, but the idea of fighting a war or fighting with tactics was completely alien to them. They were actually driven to the edge of extinction over the next 900 years.
Yep.
But just when all seemed lost, Nerion rose to become his people's savior, the first of the Phoenix Kings.
Mm-hmm.
He had traveled the world before returning to attempt to throw back the demons threatening his people. He fought his way to the shrine of Assyrian. Marky, you might remember Assyrian from our Eldar episodes, and offered himself to the creator god's sacred flame if that could save his people. When he received no response, he followed through with his word and cast his body into the flames, only to emerge unscathed and empowered by Assyrian, becoming the first Phoenix King. This marked the start of Elven recorded history. He eventually married the Ever Queen Australia, and they had twin daughters. They had twins. What's up?
Australia.
Damn it. She's Australia from now on. It's canon.
Isn't she called Astariel?
Did I say Australia?
You sure said Australia.
It sounded like Australia.
I meant what Emmy said. I thought in my head I said it right.
We're calling her Australia.
She's not around for that long. So they had twins. Their daughter named Yvraine and their son Morlian. Again, Marky, Yvraine.
Yeah.
Allied with the Archmage Kalendor Dragon Tamer, they trained the elven people in the ways of battle and war, both with weapons and magic. While their battles won brief respites, the demons just kept a-coming, wave after wave. Kalendor devised a plan that would create a great vortex, which would be capable of sucking away the excess winds of magic, denying demons the powers they needed. And Nerion dismissed this plan at first. Only after a few years of peace, the demons once again fell upon Ulthuan. Damn it. I can never remember what you guys say when I get to it.
Ulthuan.
Ulthuan.
It's kind of the same thing.
Ulthuan was besieged again in 4470 before the imperial calendar by the Keeper of Secrets, Khorney. Khorney killed the Ever Queen.
Australia.
I was trying not to do it. Australia. Astraella, whatever, Australia.
Under my Astraella, Ella.
And it seemed that the twins were killed as well. However, the elder treeman Dureth had saved them and hidden them away in Athel Loren.
Athel Loren is a forest on the mainland.
Yep. Blinded by
grief. It's where King Arthur essentially comes from too.
We're setting up all of the like different various factions of the elves right now. Mm-hmm. Blinded by grief and rage, Aaron traveled to the blighted island and drew the sword Widowmaker from the altar of Cain, cursing his entire lineage from this point forward. He returned and founded the kingdom of Nargrath, surprising everyone as he took a second wife, the seeress Morathi. Together they had a son named Malekith, and their court grew ever darker.
So this is like the same Yvraine, right? That's like Rabote Gilliman's GF?
Maybe. Maybe it's the official Games Workshop line is that the universes are separate and don't interchange, and that a lot of the names being the same is just a function of the long history of them being parallelly developed.
Because
but
they
there's
Sounds
a
like corporate
lot.
bullshit to me.
There's a
because they
lot
were
of
linked
hints.
at first, and
Yeah, they
now
were.
it's not.
They used to be able to like pull Space Marines into. I'm sorry, you used to be able to
Chaos.
pull like Chaos cultists and stuff into
you-
Rogue Trader games.
You used to be able to play with a Chaos Space Marine with a power sword and a plasma pistol with your Chaos army.
Yep. Yeah, you used to be able to do a lot of back and forth stuff. And there's a lot of hints. You know, obviously this is the official lore. Going
Now-
back and trying to verify as much of the 8th edition official lore as I could and use that as like the standard. That's what a lot of this is based on. And there's hints everywhere that the worlds are still created. I think that we have to take Games Workshop at face value right now and say that they're separate worlds that just have a lot of name conventions that are similar. But I also think that Games Workshop is playing their poker game really close to their chest because they have something that they want to do at some point. Maybe they're even building towards it now.
It probably has to do with like a lot of people used to think. It's like one came first, then the other one. They drew from both. At one point, a lot of people thought it was going to be interchangeable stuff. You would be able to play your, 10-man squad of Marines versus, an entire army of, human spearmen.
Well, and initially Games Workshop started as a model company that made models for people to use in role-playing games. So as they developed their own,
lore,
sure,
it's
sometimes
time of developing,
sometimes you create just generic hobbits, but sometimes you're like, oh, well, no, we want our hobbits to be a little different. We're going to call them halflings. They're going to do this. They're going to be from the moot. And then you start to get these little kernels. And then as you build in to an actual functional world, you start pulling different kernels in different ways.
One theory that I really like is that the old world is actually what the Emperor sees on the throne in his nightmares.
I actually like the idea that the old world is a planet that you can reach in the 40K universe, that it's just off there somewhere.
Yeah.
That's always been my favorite.
That's my
That or Sigmund is actually the Emperor when Earth, that's actually Earth, but it's Sigmund is the Emperor, and that's how old it is.
Sigmund.
I kind of
Sigmar.
Sigmund is one of the
Sigmar. It's not like he exists anymore.
Sigmund is one of the heroes of Sigmar. But yeah, one of the other
Conan the Barbarian that's wielding around a dwarven sword and hammer. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty obvious with some of Sigmar's lore that Sigmar could very easily be one of the lost two Primarchs. Like they could have done that very quickly and very easily.
I very
the way
much
that he's
like
described.
that idea.
Yeah. That he's either the 12th or the 20th.
He's the Emperor. It's the Emperor's nightmares.
So after 400 years, the forces of chaos finally breached the walls of Itza, the first city of the lizard men. Lord Croak unleashed unimaginable spells of power and destruction, so much so that his body was shredded and his spirit, however, remained to continue and fight on. A torrent of his magic tore through the city, scoring all of its demons, saving it. On Ulfon, Kaldor was spurned into action, no longer content to watch in Nehron's descent into darkness and ignorance of the coming apocalypse. Kaldor traveled to the Dwarven lands and met with Grimnir, and the two came to the conclusion that there were portals to the realm of chaos open on each of the poles. The races parted well, with an exchange of both friendship and gifts. In 4419, Kaldor returned to Ulfla and called a gathering of the greatest magic users of his people on the Island of the Dead. Here, they started a ritual to drain the world of chaotic magical energies that leaked from the poles, which allowed the demons to easily take shape and continue assaulting the mortal races. Even though Anarion opposed this plan, he was left with no choice but to defend Kaldor and his mages as their ritual progressed. While the ritual was a success, it was a bittersweet success, as it cost the High Elves dearly. It trapped Calandron and the other mages in a fate worse than even death, forever entrapped at the edge of their own ritual to create the Great Vortex. They're basically stuck on a mirrored version of the Isle of Death. That's it. They're just there, With the ritual complete, the great vortex drained much of the magic let loose on the world, sucking away the substance of the demons and causing them to be cast back into the warp. So essentially, there had been so much just extra warp energy, just like in 40K, demons need enough stuff to manifest. Before the Great Vortex, there had been enough of that crap just laying on the ground that demons could just take shape. Now, the Vortex sucked up a bunch of that stuff. The demons lose most of their energy, and now they have to, just like in 40K, expend great amounts of energy to come into our world, or come into the old world. Anarion and his forces barely held the demonic forces at bay during the ritual, and during the battle, he was actually mortally wounded. In his final act, he flew on his great dragon back to the Blighted Isle and thrust Widowmaker back into the altar of Cain. With the demons banished, Ulatha was left a ruin, but its people now had a glimmering hope for the coming future.
Yeah, Dark Elves.
They're coming.
Look at that. Look at that. That's a troll slayer.
Dude, I love troll slayers.
Not a dragon slayer. His mohawk's not tall enough. Or a demon slayer.
Is that how you tell the difference? The mohawk gets bigger when they go up to demon slayer?
Bigger mohawks, the bigger the thing they kill.
Yep.
Bigger mohawks, the bigger the thing they kill.
That's canon.
That's why my mohawk is so short, because I kill bugs.
Yeah, same.
The aftermath. As the forces of chaos unleashed by the great catastrophe finally abated, the mortal races took stock of the world around them. The lizard men set out once again to rebuild Lustria under the guidance of the remaining Slan. And while it is rumored that the Slan had planned to continue to guide the younger races, eventually the lizard men just entered a period of long isolation. During the great catastrophe, many of the race of men had fallen to the forces of chaos, becoming marauders and champions of the darker powers. Famously, the mortal warrior known as Be'lakor rose in power, becoming a demon prince, who led his forces against the other mortal races during the war. However, when the Great Vortex was summoned, he was banished back to the warp. Magic still clung to the land. It is the same Be'lakor.
Is it?
It sure is.
He's the first of the demon princes.
It is 100% the same Be'lakor.
Yep.
It's the same model kit. It's the same name.
Same
Is
name.
it really?
Yep.
It's
So
that is
in
Be'lakor.
lore, this character does break it's not the same universe then.
A lot of chaos stuff breaks it's not the same universe.
Yeah, chaos is.
Okay.
I could very easily see them doing what the fuck does Marvel call it? The Pimverse? The Panverse or whatever. Where they'll be like, oh yeah, the old world, the mortal realms are all in a different
It's in a multiverse.
universe.
Yeah. I
could
kind
see
of
them doing
figured that that's kind of how they were going to play it, is that it's like a chaos manipulation of the multiverse. Or it's like a chaos isolated, all the races are time locked, in an ancient version of themselves kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
But then the Skaven took the moon and blew everything up, so
That's because Skaven don't listen to no rules.
it's so funny. The Skaven specific, I know we're not really onto them yet, but the description of the Skaven gold mine is having little use for gold. They mine it purely to inconvenience the other races.
That's
So true.
That's it.
That's
Yes.
old Batonian artwork.
Yes.
Yep.
Shiny rock. Yes. Manlings like.
Super old artwork.
Everything out of gold, and the dwarves are basically like crypto bros, but for the aether gold. They find it in the skies, they find it on the mountaintops, and they're so pissed.
That's the new ones. The
new ones.
Caradon, whatever.
Yeah, the old ones. They were finding it in the earth. Despite, whether it was bars of latinum or like crypto, they're always fighting about the gold.
Yeah, dwarves are all about the gold in the book.
So magic still clung to the land, and most humans still lived mostly nomadic lifestyles in the dark forests of the old world. Some were still sworn to the powers of chaos, but they all fell under a dark era. For the next 1,000 years, the beastmen who had bred prolifically since the first appeared hunted the tribes of men as if for sport. A year to the day after Anarion had returned Widowmaker to the altar of Cain, the princes of Ulatha conveyed to choose a new Phoenix King. Malekith, an excellent general with both magical and martial skills, was the obvious candidate. However, his upbringing in the courts of Nagaryth counted against him, and Prince Bel-Shannara was chosen. This pissed off Marathi, but Malekith calmed her and bent to the knee quickly. Malekith soon after moved to the Old World, seeming to remove himself as a political rival, at least for now.
And you know what he did the whole time, right?
He buddied up with the dwarf. We'll get to it in a second.
Oh, not just the dwarf. Like, he weighed lace to everything and like saved the whole world.
Yeah, he and is it Grimnir? Yeah, him and Snorri Whitebeard like paraded around fighting everything.
Like they
went fighting around the world.
Grumbindal,
they
the white dwarf.
cleansed.
It's the first High King of the dwarves. Yeah.
Yeah, they cleansed everything. He was a warrior prince. He was great.
Yeah. Grimnir, one of the dwarven ancestor gods, had expertly advised the dwarven defenders of the mountain holds. But as the end had drawn near, more and more holds had fallen and been threatened before the coming of the great vortex. Eventually, he shaved his head bald, except for a mohawk. Grimnir led a band of dwarves to a third Chaos Gate in the foothills of the Middle Mountains. Here, he stood alone and fought off hordes of demons on his own. However, when the Great Vortex was completed, he vanished, and he hasn't been seen since. By the way, this is the inspiration for the Slayer cults. That is one of the races or one of the factions in the old world. Those are the dwarves that don't wear armor and have giant mohawks.
Actual units.
The remaining ancestor gods, Valea and Grungi, had passed on their lessons of ingenuity and rune casting to the dwarves. And the dwarves emerged from the Karax into a golden age. Khazar Akarak became the capital of a new dwarven civilization, with each stronghold being linked by a mighty underground passageway called the Underway. With the dwarves prospering and their future secured, the remaining ancestor gods departed. Snorri Whitebeard, the eldest son of Grungi himself, became High King. With the remnants of chaos still threatening their lands, Snorri Whitebeard reached out to the Phoenix Lord Bel-Shannara. The elves themselves enjoyed a time of expansion and prosperity, with Bel-Shannara being pretty dedicated to exploring and making new towns. He really liked that stuff. Malekith, having traveled to the western edge of the now elven lands, had fought alongside Snorri against the forces of chaos, and was eventually named ambassador by Bel-Shannara. The two, Snorri and Malekith, forming a lasting friendship. Dwarves who had crossed the Great Skull Land had suffered much during the Great Catastrophe, their holds being not as deep and they themselves not directly benefiting from the presence of their ancestor gods. Cut off, they had been thought completely lost. In reality, the dwarves of Zorn Zulkul swore themselves to the bull god Hashut, master of fire, greed, and tyranny, also known as the Father of Darkness. In return for their devotion, he would protect the Chaos Dwarves from mutation and the suffering agonies of slow demise.
So, Chaos Dwarves.
Chaos Dwarves.
Yes.
And
Chaos
they don't
dwarves.
And they don't suffer like everything else in Chaos does.
Nope.
They don't get the mutations. They don't get the super endless sicknesses. They don't get any of that stuff.
It's
get
because
the
they're not
benefits.
really like aligned to like the gods. They're just like, okay, here we are doing
aligned.
things.
They're aligned to
They-
another god.
Yeah,
basically.
They are, you want to talk about the polar, like when you talk about dwarves and how mean and nasty they are, but you want to talk about the epitome of an evil dwarf. I mean, these
yeah.
are them. They're
dwarven
they are
enslavers.
they are the reason why there are black orcs in the game. They're the reason why there's hobgoblins. It's in the old lore. That's why there's
they twisted
certain
a
orcs.
bunch
Oh,
of
did they
nasty
like
stuff.
breed the orcs into black orcs kind of thing?
Bigger, stronger, because the darker the green skin, the bigger and stronger they are,
Mhm.
and
And
the
as you-
smarter.
And as you can kind
Yeah.
of see, if you're on Patreon, and for those of you who are in the episode with me right now, as you can see, there's a grot carrying this dude's shield. They used the Chaos Dwarves use grots.
Yeah,
Oh
they
my
use
gosh.
Yeah, they're pretty. They're a brutal. They're
Yeah.
a brutal race, man. They're bad.
So the Chaos Dwarfs are just the dwarfs that were cut off from
Yeah.
the rest of the dwarven races and weren't embedded into a mountain. So they're almost like wandering
So
They're
the
like-
Well,
They're
they're,
like on the
they're in the
beginning-
mountain and stuff.
Beginning
They're
of the
just
desert,
way
like the
up there.
desert side of the mountains.
yeah, they're north enough of the desert that they were cut off by essentially an entire region. And because of that, the ancestor gods, the Grungi, Grimnar, and Valea,
didn't support them.
didn't support or help them because they, essentially like this expedition went off and everybody thought they had died because they hadn't heard from them in forever.
Mhm.
But the Dark Dwarves, needing allies and needing support, pledged themselves to Hashut, and Hashut gave them a bunch of power, basically.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Nope.
they're
They
just
were
cut
they
off
were-
dwarves.
They were great in game until they just were never supported anymore because of legal stuff.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they. I think they're on the. I've seen artwork that suggests they might be coming back though, which would be cool.
That would be cool.
People are
'Cause-
really
'cause
hyped on the fact that they're probably coming to Total War soon.
Yeah,
Because what was really cool about them too when I first started playing was, you have all these monsters and things that can fly. There was a mechanic where you could take your dragon and I'm going to fly high. So they couldn't be targeted for a whole turn. They could come down the next turn. Well, they had a relic or what I forget
Electrify
what all
the
stuff
sky.
is called. It would basically be, you're stuck up there till I say otherwise.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, they were the only faction that could do that. It was nuts. They had some cool stuff.
Prosperity and the expansion of their empire and new trade routes allowed the wealth of the Ulatha to just increase exponentially. And eventually, a degree of decadence had begun to creep its way into elven society. For centuries, Marathi had encouraged pleasure, excess, and luxury cults throughout Nagaroth. These cults began to spread their influence through the 10 kingdoms of Ulatha. The Phoenix King may have noticed sooner, but as I mentioned earlier, Bel Shinar had been more dedicated to exploring than being a king, even visiting Khazar Akrak and reaffirming the allegiance between the elves and dwarves with the High King Snorri Whitebeard in 2839. Sometime after the passing of his friend and ally, the High King of the dwarves, Snorri, Malekith began to grow restless in his duties to Bel Shinar. He found the circlet of iron in the ruins of an ancient city of Varshagar, built not by the hands of dwarves, elves, or even men, a place where impossible angles and architecture that hurt the eye even to behold. Malekith bent himself to unlock the circlet's secrets. Diving deeper into the obsession of dark magic, his skills as a sorcerer just exploded during this time. So Malekith basically did not take the death of his buddy real well.
Nope.
And he wandered. And when he was wandering, he found the circlet of iron.
Hmm.
Malekith was an elf.
Malekith is an elf. Yeah, so Malekith is the
He's
son
the rightful king.
of Morathi and Anaron.
And Aaron.
Yeah. So
yeah, my brain just did Aaron.
So he's-
Anarion, thank you.
He's-
I was like,
he's-
not Aaron. What is wrong with you?
he's the son of the first elven king. And I know we already went over it, but when the elven king died, people didn't like the fact that he came from the other part of the elven kingdom that was a little darker. It's basically he
So
comes from the part of
basically-
the elven kingdom where all the warriors, all the warrior crafts are from.
Not the artsy fartsy ones.
Not the artsy fartsy.
So,
Yep.
so it's a mix of two things. First, all of the warrior nobles kind of moved to that area because they were all, the first Phoenix Lord was a general.
A badass.
Anarion was a general. However, when Anarion's wife, the Everqueen, was killed, when Australia was killed, when Aristrella was killed, he kind of cycled into rage and grief and depression. And during that time, he went and took Widowmaker, which is the sword of Cain. And just like the avatar of Cain, just like Cain in the 40K universe, Cain in the old world essentially like
God of murder.
whispers conquest and glory and bloodletting into your ear. So Anarion became darker and darker and more bent towards war. And because of that, Nagarinth kind of became this darker and darker and darker place. And because of that, and probably also because she was already a little fucked up on her own, Marathi, his wife, basically is a cultist, a devotee to Slaanesh, and is whispering into his empire's ears the entire time and spreading these pleasure cults. So just like the normal fall of the Eldari, essentially, just like the fall of the Eldari, essentially, all of these cults are growing because of her manipulations.
And you got two major cults. You got the pleasure cult and you got the murder cult.
Yeah. And there's also a luxury cult. Those are the three that are named. But the luxury cult, it's kind of hard to tell. Like, other than I like expensive things, I'm not really sure what they did.
That's the artisans.
Just eat caviar.
Yes, probably just like decadent feasts and that. Yeah, exactly.
Champagne and cigarettes all night long.
Right.
And this is all before
Swisher sweets.
What is this? A cigarillo?
The flavored cigarillos.
They're death sticks.
Death sticks. So this is all before the elves split between elves and dark elves. Okay,
that hasn't happened yet. This is the seeds of that happening.
Yes, gotcha. Okay.
So in 2751, Malekith returned to Ulathon, responding to rumors of these pleasure cults, specifically that they were practicing living sacrifices and aligning themselves to the darker gods of chaos that he had fought so hard to banish. The cults were strongest in Nagarinth, with Marathi being rumored to be the cult's high priestess. Malekith appeared horrified and denounced his mother and all of these covens, imprisoning many on behalf of the Phoenix King. This, however, was a ruse, as mother and son had already schemed towards Bel-Shanar's downfall. Civil war against the cults seemed inevitable, and Malekith called the 10 elven lords to a council of war at the shrine of Assyrion. His goal was to raise a unified army to hunt down the cults and end their influence for good. On the night before the council meeting, however, Malekith accused Belsharna of being a secret devotee to the pleasure cults, and then stated that he had killed the Phoenix King himself with poison already. However, the princes had known their king for centuries, and none of them believed Malekith's accusation. But it was too late. The trap was sprung, and the forces of Nagarinth had encircled the shrine, butchering the lords and their bodyguards, allowing Malekith to stride towards and seize the blessing of Assyrion, which he felt was his birthright. This part is really fucked up, by the way. But where the flames had empowered Anarion with rebirth, his traitorous kin, Malekith, was burned horribly, scarred as his flesh and hair melted away. But through his pure force of will, he was able to cast himself back out of the flame, and through malice and hatred alone, even while mortally wounded, managed to cling on to the edge of death. Malekith's force took up his still smoking body and fled the shrine to the Northlands. These events marked only the beginning of what would become the Elven Civil War. With his absence in place, Marathi took command. The Nagarinth warriors were well drilled in the teachings of Anarion and swiftly secured the vital assets across the entire island continent.
So he died, but he lived?
No.
So he cast himself. Anarion had stepped into the Everflame of Assyrion. It's essentially like it's a big fire. And when he had done it, he had basically walked through the halls of Assyrion and gained Assyrion's power and come back to the old world, basically like this impossible to kill god. Malekith wanted that because his father had it, and he was, obviously he's his father's, what's it called?
Rightful
heir. So when he cast himself into the fire did not find him worthy and burned him.
It finds him
rejected
unworthy because he's tainted by chaos.
He's already tainted by chaos. And he's tainted by chaos because of the iron, all of his research into the iron circlet, the circlet of iron. However, Malekith at this point is already such a dangerous dark sorcerer that he basically forces his will to propel his body to step out of the flames. And then for like a couple hundred years, just lives on the edge of death as this like mass of muscle and scar tissue that's constantly in pain.
So
Like the common theme.
Anakin Skywalker, yes.
Yeah.
I know where you're going with this.
Like
Yeah,
some
he
of the other
definitely.
factions as well. If we think about like, you know, this, oh, I'm kind of dead, but I'm also not that dead. You guys keep doing what I'm telling you to do, though. Like, you know, is not like Lord Croak doing that. In some instances, the Great Horned Rat almost kind of does this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So does he
Dead
eventually?
in like the Princess Bride
he gets-
kind of way.
oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm reading ahead a little bit. You're going to answer that question soon. What Marky wants to know, right?
What's the question that Marky wants to know?
Does he eventually like come back a badass?
I'll never tell.
Dude.
I'm just kidding. I'll tell in a couple minutes.
Yeah, that's episode
So
2.
On the other side of the world, a titanic warpstone meteorite appeared in the sky above the heads of the nomadic ogres on the fertile rolling steplands. They had learned the secrets of fire and even traded with their human Cathayan neighbors. However, as they expanded, the ogres began to pillage and even prey and eat the peasant children of Cathay. Eventually, the celestial dragon emperor, his most exalted majesty, Zen Hung, of the Imperial Empire of Cathay, I had to read his entire title, had finally had enough with the ogres. Whether his astronomers had anything to do with the meteor, or if it just happened as coincidence, is purely speculation. However, the meteor grew day by day, driving the ogres to madness as it approached, before it turned even night into day and then slammed into the steplands. The impact and following firestorms destroyed 2/3 of the ogre's entire population. The comet buried itself deep in the world, even causing the maelstrom on the other side of it. The verdant steppes had been reduced to a wasteland, those ogres who survived falling to starvation and eventually succumbing to cannibalism. When the meteor had appeared, some said it looked to have a great maw on its surface, as if it was some great deity, and it was this vengeful deity that Groth One Finger led his tribe to, over the desolate landscape of the wasteland steppes, to offer sacrifices. This gaping hole was immense, like an inland sea devoid of water, plummeting into unseen depths. Its edge was filled with row upon row of jagged teeth, which gave way to a convulsing muscular gullet that stretched down into the vast nothingness. The ogres, unable to move east because of the desolation into Cathay to continue plundering there, were forced to move west into the mountains, looking for a new home. This is how they ascended into the ancient giant lands, where they came into contact with the Sky Titans. These ancients led solitary existences, and they were much, much more intelligent than the giants that they resemble. While massively powerful, the ogres still, however, outnumbered each Sky Titan 100-1, and their isolation ended up being their downfall, as one by one, the Sky Titans fell to the ogres, who would feast upon their bloody remains in their great halls.
So what's a Sky Titan?
A giant.
A Sky Titan is bigger, is a son of Bahamut, but bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Take your chaos giants that you made for Blood Bowl and make them 4 times that size. That's a Sky Titan.
Huh.
Basically,
And
the ogres pulled them down and then just fucking ate them.
So little ass ogres beat the crap out of a bunch of giants. Well,
The only
they
reason
are
they were
not
able to
little.
do it,
He outnumbered them.
yeah, is that they outnumbered them 100-1, and the Sky Titans didn't talk to each other. They lived. Think of Shadow of the Colossus. You know, that little kid is able to go around murdering all the colossi because the colossi never worked together. It's the exact same thing.
okay.
And they were hungry.
The ogres?
Yeah.
The
They're always
ogres.
hungry.
They were
So the
hungry.
ogres,
Hungry.
Part
They were
of the-
hangry.
part of the gifts of the Great Maw are that the ogres are essentially like gifted with an insatiable hunger, and pretty much predominantly for flesh of other mortal races,
And they
including each other.
They can eat anything, if I remember right, as well. Like, they
Yeah,
can literally
but
just
they like to eat flesh.
anything.
Man flesh.
Yeah, and they like man flesh best of all. That's why my Blood Bowl team is named Man Eater United.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I like the pun. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Thank you. The civil war in Ulatha dragged the prince lords who had survived the Council of War out of hiding, and Malekith's betrayal spurred them into action. Under mounting pressure from Marathi's forces, who took the kingdoms of Turanok and Elrion, they convened to select the next Phoenix Lord. Imric, son of Meneth, the grandson of Kaldor the Dragon Tamer, became the third Phoenix Lord, taking on the name of Kaldor the First. Some of the Nagrathi nobles still sided with the Phoenix Lord and rose up against Malekith, but they were defeated in the Battle of Dark Fen by Marathi. The survivors, led by Aleth Anar, began a long guerrilla warfare against the Nagrathi. She is a relatively famous hero from the old world. Kalendor I rallied the forces of Ulathan, of Ulatha. I'm done.
Australia.
I keep wanting to say Ulathe, but it's not Ulathan. But everywhere the corruption of Marathi's cults had ran deep. The renegade priest of Val, the forge god, this renegade's priest name was Hotek, forged a suit of armor that would forever fuse Malekith to a rune-etched second skin of black metal, answering Marky's question, allowing him to once again ride out at the head of his war hosts. This is how he became the Witch King of Nagarith. Kalendor and Malekith were well matched as generals. Marathi's assassins were not able to get close to Kalendor I, who is surrounded at all times by his white lions and mages, and Kalendor's might on the battlefield saw him slay many of Nagarath's champions in single combat. Finally, in 2724, before the imperial calendar, on the fields of Kalendor and Malekith met in single combat. Both rode their dragons into battle. Kalendor eventually slew Malekith's chaos-tainted dragon mount, forcing the Witch King and his forces to retreat. The Nagarinth forces in the Northlands became the Druchi, or the Dark Elves. Consumed by rage, Malekith tried one last desperate attempt at victory, attempting to unweave the Great Vortex, which would once again unleash chaos on the old world. One of his followers, however, didn't like this idea and betrayed him, reporting these actions to Kalendor, and the spell was challenged. Malekith, however, still almost succeeded, even the demons of the warp seeing what he was doing and actually aiding him with their own magic from the other side. However, as he started to unweave the outer shells of the Great Vortex, he actually awokened the mages and Kalendor Dragon Tamer, who were still trapped on the Isle of Death, and they started to fight alongside with the defenders of Kalendor I. This backlash killed most of Malekith's coven and drowned much of Nagarinth. However, Malekith and some of his remaining sorcerers escaped and were able to tear their very keeps, called the Black Arcs, from the bedrock of the land, and they floated like icebergs as tidal waves destroyed Nagarith and the surrounding areas of the island nation of Ulathan. Malekith and his minions fled this cataclysm, sailing to the northwest to a desolate wilderness, forming the new kingdom of Nagaroth. Getting Nagarith and Nagaroth right has been a chore.
Yep.
What remains of the once majestic and beautiful lands of Nagarith were now a blasted landscape that has been renamed the Shadowlands. And that there, folks, pretty much sums up the dawn of creation, which sets out most of the factions of Warhammer and gets you pretty much almost to where the game setting can begin. A lot like 40K, you can kind of pick a wide range of a couple thousand years to play in, and this setup pretty much everything. The Empire is not really well defined. The human empires aren't
Yeah.
really well defined.
This didn't
Not
bring
yet.
up any of the humans,
Yeah.
the Tomb Kings, the Norskins.
A lot of the stuff that kind of developed post first and second edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Yeah.
There
They're
were
guys
humans.
on their own.
Was humans just or was like the original first edition just dwarves, lizard men, elves?
There were dwarves,
And
lizard
orcs.
men, elves, orcs, and men. But men were not like there were
It was
there were like,
it was
like
just
the
lore.
peasants and stuff.
Yeah,
the lore is different. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
the
They were just people.
the
Okay.
history of the old world is really well fleshed out. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah. That's why I was
Yeah.
like, because at this point, or at the point that Total War takes place, a bunch of these characters that you're talking about, like they
Well-
definitely did like a time mesh
Mhm.
to
Are still
condense it
alive.
down.
They're
But then,
thousands
like,
of
we
years
haven't-
old.
A lot of these heroes
Yeah,
returned
Melkith
during
is
the end
thousands of
times.
years
Yeah.
old,
Right.
and so is
Mhm.
Marathi.
Yeah,
like,
he's
they're-
playable.
Yeah.
Croak is in it.
Marathi well, fan theory. Marathi is I believe, the leader of the Daughters of Cain, but I could be wrong.
No, I
She's
don't know
not.
about the new. I don't know about the new stuff, but she was supposed to be the high priestess for the witch elves, which are the daughters of Cain in the old lore. But that was just her front. She still had the pleasure cults going on in the background.
Yeah, the Daughters of Cain in Age of Sigmar are a little different, and I think Marathi. So one of the things at Age of
Do
Sigmar
they still
is the
have? Do they? I gotta ask. God, I can't think. Hellborn, is she still a character in Age of Sigmar?
No, there's only a couple.
Ah.
Only a couple of the characters came across in Age of Sigmar. Nagash came across. Sigmar came across. One of the Dwarven gods came across. The Great Horned Rat came across. But basically, Sigmar. Lord Croak. Sigmar goes around resurrecting the gods that he thinks, the heroes and gods he thinks can help him like fight back chaos, and establishes the 9 realms. And this is a super brief on this because it's super complicated. But I think Marathi is one of the heroes that he brings back.
Yeah, she's playable.
Yeah, I think she's
She
yeah.
has 2 models now.
yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
fancy.
She's just a fan. She's a fan favorite. But yeah, guys,
She's awesome.
that will wrap it up for our first episode of Under the Realms of Madness. We will be back with another episode in the series in about a month's time, covering part 2 of the Old World's history as we reach towards approaching the end times and eventually the coming of the Age of Sigmar. This has been a pretty requested topic by our community, and we are super honored to have Emmy here to help us out as we deep dive into all 9 realms coming up in the future.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Emmy, how can people best contact you about all of your Warhammer geekiness?
Gosh, my primary social medium these days is the TikTok. They can reach me at my @ which is Coral Pecan. You can ping me in the Discord. That's generally where I'm most responsive to things. And if you're real old school, you can always email me at coralpecan@gmail.com.
There you go.
What about carrier pigeons?
Yeah, how do they find you?
Gosh. I don't know.
Do you
That one, we're not comfortable.
do you have a local Morse code office that we can send a message to?
It's probably because your cat won't allow it.
Yeah,
They-
the cat will eat the pigeons, and also please don't come to my house.
There you go, Marky. There's the great Ma.
Yeah.
Fun.
Do you feel uncomfortable?
It looks delightful.
Well, and then it's connected.
Delightful.
It's connected
You want
to the
put-
maelstrom,
you-
which is on the
you wanna put your
other
big toe in there?
side of the planet,
Well,
under the
Yeah.
It's at the bottom of the ocean, right?
Yeah, it causes a bunch of bullshit on the ocean.
Yeah, but
So, even
and it's
better.
where the essentially it causes in a way it's Count Noctilus's like hang out.
Yeah,
He hangs out at the bottom of a giant whirlpool.
We'll get to a bunch of crazy undead stuff. The undead are coming. The Empire are coming. The Dwarven faction breakdowns are coming. We're getting in. The next series will happen. Or the next episode will cover a lot more in the series. What was that?
Batonian, the actual fan favorite that got neglected.
I mean, it's hard to keep up when
he's an awesome character.
Yeah.
Leon Kerr.
If you guys want to share your short stories, lore, or spooky dookie with us, you can also hit us up by the super outdated email method with underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or jimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also get a hold of us by joining our community on Discord. Not only do we talk about the lore, hobby, and tactics of Age of Sigmar, see what I did there, but we also talk about Warhammer 40k, Magic the Gathering, role-playing Magic the Gathering. That's what you call it. I was like, it's not gathering, it's Magic the Gather.
Role-playing Magic the Gathering.
Role-playing games, video games, and much, much more. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, or check out our website, underthehiveofmadness.com. You can help the podcast grow by liking and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast fix. We are home on Spotify and Anchor FM, but we are also present on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and many, many more. Support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. All Patreon members get access to a video podcast with minimal editing, so you can see our beautiful faces and hear all of our amazing blunders. All Patreon levels also get access to our quarterly painting contest. Plus, we have some other perks at higher levels, so I really encourage you to head on over and check it out.
Heavy, reliable. If you're ever out of shots, you can just hit with it. It's Antorian Arms.
Arconia's premier source of reliable stopping power. From superheated plasma to those easily concealable stub hand cannons. The Hive's finest choice in all things heavy armament.
It goes bang.
We are the degenerate hivers your parents warned you about. The maxed out metal and leather clad ragers of rebellion, screaming louder than the Ministorum's friendly morale officers or that rat that keeps trying to convince us to join them. 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio. Reminding all of you Chemrats, hive mice, and sump ghoulies to keep those dials fixed right here. Same ratty frequency for a dose of the same ratty ass attitude. Up from the Skaven Blight to give you a good message. Four-armed Emperor, good, yes, nom, nom.
There it is. That's it.
Perfect.
We're good.
That's the thing.
Send it to post.
That's the thing.